Hello and welcome back to Shelf Centered. Appreciate you coming by. Seriously, thank you so much. I keep saying that and I can't stop, so here we go. That's just gonna be the thing I do. Uh, okay, so let's jump into it. That's what we do. We jump here. The Sandman. The Sandman on audiobook. This is a big thing. I double checked. It's last time I checked, it is still free right now. It's by Neil Gaiman. Do you need anything more? It's read by a full cast. I mean, it's free, and those things are also part of it. So you might as well just get it right now while it's free. Now, the problem is you're going to want the next one, and so that's where they're going to get you, because the next one is not even out yet, and it's out pretty soon, I think. And I'll put things in here. No. And to show, anyway, the next act in the Sandman. So, but I wanted to get into, clearly, go get it. It doesn't even make any sense not to. It's free. It's on Audible. And it's, so I guess we'll get into, first of all, it's narrated by none other than Neil Gaiman. And if there's someone who should narrate all things other than like Stefan Rudnicki, it should be Neil Gaiman. And he's just so good. His voice is just wonderful to listen to. I mean, I see him in the those commercials for the master class or whatever, and I'm like, okay, you got me on this one. This is good. I could listen. I could do this one. So Sandman, the whole cast it's nuts. It's James McAvoy, first of all, is so perfect. One of the things that I was actually surprised about, I was just talking with someone about this, Kat Dennings is death. And at first it's like, Kat Dennings is death. And then in the book, it's like, Kat Dennings is death. This is so good. I would have it no other way. There's the perfect thought that I might have had, and then there's Kat Dennings doing death, and that was amazing. So, worth it alone just for that. I might have overhyped it, but I'm not going back. So, the full cast, I can't even list. I think even Don Cheadle. There's just so many, and it's funny because then the last 5 minutes of the book I just did, super spoiler, just kidding, no spoiler, but it just reads off every single person in the cast, and there's so many, and you're going, oh, okay, all right, that. So anyway, you can find that out. It's really easy. They're actually big time advertising. Look at all these people that have worked into this. So it's a brilliant cast, and it's better cast than I thought. Like I said, James McAvoy is our Sandman, is the and essentially Endless of Dreams, the guy who's in charge of dreams, and he's so perfect. His voice is just spot on. Again, this was one I was like, yeah, I guess he's Charles Xavier, hey, we'll take it. But I mean, if he played this, and I guess I should look that up, because there is a real live action one. I wonder why they went free on this. I just can't tell, for multiple reasons, probably. So anyway, the cast alone, I could go off on that for ages. The cast alone is amazing. Then there's production, there's, clomping feet and, susurration of voices in the background. See, I said in my last video I needed a thesaurus. Yeah, you know what? Pass Bryce, you're wrong. Okay, susurration, done. And so there's susurrations, there's all kinds of... Okay, now I need a thesaurus again. And it's good. I'm going to talk about... So I'm starting out positives. There are some negatives. Everything has a negative, and I'll go over that after. But I like talking about the positives first. But so anyway, the story itself, and I guess I got to tell, I actually read the initial comic book, the graphic novel, I should say. Sorry. Preludes and Nocturnes. So that's the first Sandman volume. I read it ages ago, and at the time, I just don't know if I was in a good headspace. I was in law school at the time, and it was already a pretty miserable time. We could chat about that if anyone wants to. But And so I was already in a dark place, and this was so dark. I just don't think I was prepared for it, because I remember acknowledging how good the story was and how creative and just detailed, and how, anyway, I just remember acknowledging this is a really amazing story, but I don't know if I can keep continuing with the series just for how dark it was, because I was already in a dark place. And I have to say, be ready. That's what this is. It's dark, and it's it doesn't let up. I mean, at one point, I don't think this is spoiling too much, but you have been warned. There's essentially a serial killer convention. How much darker can it get there? But actually, that was kind of funny. But in only the way that Neil Gaiman can do, it's like he goes dark, but and magical, I should say, not but. It's because the dark is good. It's a good thing, and I have to say I'm in a good place now. The dark I can take, and because it is dark, and I mean, you have people's minds getting taken over and doing kind of horrendous things, and so be prepared for that. It's definitely dark, but it's good. It's so good. What am I doing with my hands? And so I definitely just be prepared for that, though, and maybe with the virus around, it's not a good time, because that is understandable. But I could say creativity is top notch, and the story. So the story, let's just get into that. The story is, I don't even know how to describe it, but it starts out, and this is no spoilers if I hadn't mentioned that before. You start out, and it's these kind of guys, Burgess, this guy, interesting kind of guy. He's able, and he finds something. He's trying to trap death, because he wants to, like any human, you want to, and I guess as any, there's a light up there, as any, and that's, pretty typical starting of a story. Someone wants to cheat death and find the fountain of youth, or whatever it may be, and in this case, it's to trap death and essentially control death. Well, they don't catch death, they catch the Sandman, they catch our guy, Morpheus. And so it's and trap him for quite some time, and enough time that it kind of wreaks havoc on his realm, and people start having some issues, and with their dreams and all this, and sleeping issues and everything. So, man, that light. So that is kind of where we start, and then you go from there. And this is a DC comic, right? This is from DC. So you also get this kind of crossover. So we get crossed over with like the Arkham Asylum, and I'm sure more. Apparently there is an adaptation coming up with Lock and Key, which is written by Joe Hill, and it's another audiobook similar to this, that very dark, very interesting, and well written and good. So that's going to be an adaptation to not miss. Anyway, so but this one, I can't. I mean, the story itself and how it's kind of told, because this is, again, not spoiling really, but it's kind of episodic, and you kind of get into certain areas, and so you kind of have like a new character sometimes, and then another new character will pop up. So it's kind of interesting that way. But then it kind of starts, then it'll kind of tie some things in, and that's what tying in. That's the symbol for that, and that's cool. So this it's really interesting. This kind of episodic, and again, it's kind of like, that's a lot of what a graphic novel will do. If you've read any graphic novels, they don't necessarily always just have a straight story. And again, I don't know, I've reached a point in my life where I like your straight story, don't get me wrong, but something new and crazy and unique, and that hasn't been told before, that is my jam. That is so good. I mean, something like Pilo Family Circus, if you've ever read that, that's another one. I'll get into that one probably at some point. And another dark one. I have a dark streak, don't I? But Can't. So just kind of leaving it at that. It's the story of the dream, right? Of dreams, of Morpheus, who's in charge of dreams. But then his interactions. There's other types like him, like death. There's what was it? Despair. Those kinds of things. And they kind of end up interacting too. And it starts out, actually, the first little bit is kind of more of a quest type thing where Morpheus is trying to kind of put things back together, get his powers back, and so that's really interesting because he has to go down to like Hades, and he's got to go to these different places, and then it gets episodic with, like I said, there's the serial killer convention. Okay, so I said I would talk about some of the negatives. Some of the negatives, and I think in any of these like really well-produced things, all these well-produced audiobooks, it can be overly produced, and I've listened to a lot of audiobooks. I feel like I'm quite the expert in audiobook listening, and one of the things that kind of throws me out of a story is if there is too much production. And so I get it, they're trying to make it, kind of like a movie in your head, and they do that, they accomplish that, but the problem will be that it kind of it pulls you out, and they're trying to I don't necessarily want a movie in my head. I just want a story. And I think the best narrators and the best audiobook types are the ones that you almost forget that that someone is voicing characters. It just becomes, because when I read, I have an internal monologue, and you just keep going forward that way, right? Every single one of the things I think that threw me out a little bit here was every introduction to a new kind of chapter would be, you'd have kind of this like introduction to characters, and then it'd be the Sandman. Anyway, and that's exactly like that. Prove me wrong, and maybe I'll find the audio. Anyway, so that kind of just is like, I just want to be in the story, and then that kind of like, oh yeah, we are having a big production. And some of those things, like sometimes the actors will, and this is one of my pet peeves with audiobooks, is whispered. That there was only like one time that I really remember this whole thing, that they kind of will whisper, and it's like, now I've got to rewind, and maybe, I'm doing something, and that's not very easy. Again, first world problems, obviously, but that's one of those. It's just like, you just can't whisper on an audiobook. You can like fake whisper, but make it loud. I don't know. That's just my my pet peeve, that I need actual talking. So, but some of that production gets a little overdone, I think. But honestly, in any of these, I mean, where's the line? Because also I appreciated the production, so I can't knock them too much. I seriously highly recommended. This is so fun. It's the right price, and I'll check again and make sure that I have the right things when I actually post the video, which will be very shortly. But I'll make sure that it is still free, so I'm not just saying that, and I'll tell you that. But can't recommend this enough. Check it out. It's so good, and we're getting lights everywhere. Thanks again for stopping by. I cannot thank you enough. And please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Tell me how these lights really beautify my face. I know. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.